G'day, this is just an update. The Hopawati, if you're in Australia. I really am going to ask you, this is good news for a change. I'm going to ask you to consider, in light of what I'm about to tell you, whether you would push this video around or at least push my GoFundMe page around. And it's not just a begging for money, it's a begging for money in order for my children, which is a very different thing than just saying, oh, could you please give me money? There's lots of worthy causes, I understand, but a mother walking around the world without her children and children walking around the world without their loving mother is definitely one of them, and particularly if you've been taking stock of any of the things that I've been saying in these broadcasts below. And I've ported them over to YouTube at DDTV, that's DEEDEE TV Australia, so that when they expire here, they're going to stay in perpetuity over there. Breaking news, I just got given the green light by the National Contravention Centre at the Family Law Court, and so the hearing is absolutely imminent, and I'm going to desperately be needing representation. I say desperately because I've done all this, as I've explained to you myself before, to such a revolting extent now. It was first 2008 when I was litigated over my children, and my daughter was 3, and this person didn't want to inconvenience himself by driving an hour and a quarter out of Sydney despite touring nationally for a living with a band, which he still does to this day. And so that being egregiously unfair, particularly since we never had a relationship either, I have explained before that I stupidly consented to return to Sydney because his mum was nice to me and I really liked her, and we used to laugh, and she helped me out with childcare. And of course childcare is the huge bugbear for women all around the world alongside free contraception, and these two things are crucial to underpinning female equality, but I do digress. I'm back on my plight. I haven't tucked my 11-year-old daughter into bed since she's 8. This is the point at which I usually cry, and I'm going to try very hard not to. Nor my son into bed for 5 years. And I never harmed my children in any way. They weren't. Again, the reason that I'm on here is to keep driving people to go over to Instagram and have a look, because I'm repeating myself because I don't know whether people are watching all of these or just one of these. But this time last year, November last year, I had 3 posts at Instagram. I did not care for it at all. I thought it was a tool for self-promoters. But it is a tool for all of commerce and to show beautiful pictures of life and everything else. And I have now 1,600 videos and photos. Hello, whoever that is. Murrumbidgee Jones, g'day, of my children over at Instagram that I've uploaded, and it took me a long while to do that over at Instagram. Type in my name and you'll see it. And so today, after literally going into the Family Law Court like 7 times over the last 2 years and trying to lodge what's called a contravention appeal so that I can say, look, this person is contravening the family law court orders that I have for my child. There's no punishment in Australian law for this whatsoever, despite the fact, as I keep saying to Federal Minister, Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, who is ultimately the head of the Federal Circuit and Family Law Court in Australia, and to Federal Minister Katie Gallagher, who is the Minister for Women, and to anyone who'll listen, including you, that and by way of petition soon too, it's the necessary thing. It's absolutely insane. If you don't pay your parking fine, if you get a parking fine today in Sydney and you don't pay it for 4 months, you will literally find out that they will cancel your driver's licence. And if you get in your car after that and drive, you will be in the same court, which is a criminal court, as rapists and murderers. Probably not on the same day, but the same court. So your skill set hasn't changed at all, but you don't pay a parking fine in Australia. 4 months later, they cancel your licence. You drive, it's a criminal offence. Whereas if you steal a child off their loving parent, like me, and remember, I've worked as a childcare professional because I was forced into it to leave not 1 but 2 abusive men. And I had children. So what choice did I have with childcare at $140 per child per day? And this is the case for every single woman in Australia, and especially every single woman in Australia, because that level, 2 children, was $280 a day. And as I've said before, $1,400 a week, $72,000 a year. After rebates from Julia Gillard, it was $54,000, $52,000 out of pocket, $54,000 out of pocket expenses to me before I'd even paid rent or eaten or paid a phone or bought my children clothes or food, right? So it's impossible, in other words. So you're literally forced onto a pension, a single parent's pension, where you are rotting in poverty, if not homelessness as well, because who can afford to live on $550 a week? Insane. And this is part of the stinking filth of patriarchy. It's where budgets get spent on $600 billion submarines that aren't going to turn up until well after China's done the shit show down here. And by the way, for $2,500, they already manufacture underwater drones in China that detect submarines. So they're totally fucking redundant. But the boys are going to tell us that the boys' supply chain and the war machine of the boys and their supply chain, because not many chicks make submarines, right? They don't. It's not in the supply chain. It's a gendered supply chain, just like nursing and teaching is female heavy and unpaid care work, right? So we can somehow argue through a bullshit Scott Morrison deal that signed us up to AUKUS, where we've got to fund a $600 billion submarines. No, we don't, Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong and Tanya Plibersek and Mark Dreyfus and any other, and particularly Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer. No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. Can it right now before you owe for that too, okay? Before you've got to pay someone huge amounts of money for pulling out of a contract that you don't need. Stop it right now, because if you can't find $600 billion for women to have childcare so that they are absolutely equal with men and they can step straight back into the workforce so that they never have to suffer like, oh, I can't leave this man who's abusing me in front of my children because where would I live? And that's the plight of every woman on earth in this situation. But we are in an advanced democracy called Australia, or we're meant to be, right? And the boys are still telling us we can't afford universally free childcare. Well, I'm 52 now, and when I was 30, I was working on a film set with the first AD to Phil Noyce. And if you don't know who director Phil Noyce is, you're probably not that into cinema. And he approached me and said, you're good. What have you done? And I went, well, on my own short films and worked on film sets when I was 16 and 13, actually true, and my own and a film degree at UTS, but nothing much else. And he said, Phil Noyce is looking for an EA. Do you want the gig? I didn't get it, but I got the introduction. And I lost my licence for not paying a parking fine, so I couldn't take the next film, which was Judy Davis and Billy Connolly. And it was coincidentally linked to, forgotten it now, it's an act of God film. And so, anyway, that's a bit off track. But so in other words, the point was to say I had a life. You know, I had a life I could have stepped back into in paid work if I could have afforded childcare. And as a single mother, why on earth should I, as any mother? Why isn't it a tax? Just stop for another moment. If Malcolm Turnbull, who ran this country as the Prime Minister and made $350 million off of Aussie Mail when he first started after Spycatcher, when he was a barrister, he came back and invested in the very first email system in Australia called Aussie Mail, O-Z-E-M email. And he made $350 million. Now, he would still have quite a sizable portion of that, not the least of which, of course, he would have invested some of it. It's parked in the Cayman Islands. Anyone can put their money in a Swiss bank account, and multinationals, if you go and look at the list of who didn't pay tax last year, all the Rio Tintos and all the big companies paid bugger all tax. Google itself between 2009 and 2018 made a profit, not a turnover, a profit of $9 billion in Australia alone, and paid $200,000 tax. So they're trying to fix the tax system, and PricewaterhouseCoopers has got the, inside run on what they're trying to do, so goes and tells all of their corporate clients how to get around and avoid what the government's about to do and how to structure yourself now to get around it. All of these people, Gina Rinehart, the entire stinking lot who stole Aboriginal land and make filthy $1 million of profits out of Aboriginal land and then sue their own family and then get on bullhorns and argue against raising wages for poor workers. Clive Palmer, how is he not in jail? He literally bankrupted and he literally got rid of a mining facility in Queensland, all of his staff there, without paying them what they were legally owed, claiming the whole operation was bankrupt. That fucker's still walking around funding the No campaign and funding other things. I mean, this country is up the river, like it's up shit creek without a paddle right now, unless Labor takes the opportunity, seizes it. Don't go middle, softy, tread down the middle and don't do anything. Do a Whitlam, because people need you to do a Gough Whitlam. They elected you for proper reform. The reason that all the Teals are in, the reason that the women, Allegra Spender and Zali Steggall and all of the Teals rolled the LNP out of their seats is because they've got politics for women that they want to see happen. And by the way, with climate change again, I'll say it again, the quickest way to halve climate change, halve the population. The way you do that, you give women free contraception all over the world, shot in their arm to make them immune to a man ejaculating in them. That's how you do it, because they can be raped, and they are, every day into submission at 12 years of age, bags over their heads, you name it. Men have got them stitched up on most corners of the planet: Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, all the Middle East, like most of South America, where the Catholic Church is telling them they can't have a condom, all the way through Africa too, can't have an abortion, can't have a condom. All these men, and in the Catholic Church's case, it's all pedophile club, where they get to take your money as you confess, so they got the dirt on you in the way in, then they put the confessional tray around, they take your money, then they rape your kids. Fuck off. A pedo club telling women what to do around the world. Get real, Labor. It's time to punch up. You can't afford $600 billion submarines because, A, they're redundant because there's already underwater drones, okay? There's already underwater drones, so they're redundant. And that fact came from the head, she was female too, of the US military in about 2014. So it's 9 years old, that information. So if we're part of AUKUS, why are we not being told by America that submarines are redundant because the Chinese have got underwater drones, and if they're only $2,500 per unit, then they can make 1 million of them for what? Fuck all, right? And so you're going to tell us you can afford to spend $600 billion on nuclear submarines, but you can't afford universal childcare for women? Bullshit. You just don't care. And you is every man watching this who isn't writing to their local member of parliament going, hi, I've got a dick and balls, but, I really believe that women should be equal to us. They should have universally free childcare, because I'd like to see my wife come home after working 40 or 50 hours a week and going, gee, I didn't just pay my entire wage to the childcare bill. How about that? Have you done that yet? Any man watching? Have you? No? Haven't noticed that APEC last week had 24 leaders in San Francisco, APEC, in 2023. There were 24 leaders. One was a woman. Do you notice that? No, just looks like the world every night, doesn't it? Just another day, just another International Man's Day, isn't it? Right? And then all of the GDP is made on the back of unpaid female labour. Almost all of it. And say all of it. I say a lot of the trimmings, because if we weren't bringing up taxpayers for free, getting back onto the tax, why is childcare not a 100% tax write-off? Why? Shout out here to the gorgeous and absolutely delightful human being, Anna Gray. She is a very well-reputed Australian makeup artist. I had the great pleasure of meeting her in 2010 when her and her daughter knocked on my door to do some charity collecting. Even though she was a single mother, she was out charity collecting. Her beautiful daughter, who's now a grown-up swan, suffered a birth injury, and it absolutely, she was getting up. This is what I went and told Malcolm Turnbull, who wasn't the Prime Minister then. He was my local member, and I was at Clovelly running a childcare 50 hours a week for 4 years by myself to escape a man who said, Danielle, I could kill you and get away with it because everyone would believe it was in self-defence. After he slammed a door in my nose when he knew I was pregnant, laughed at the bruise it caused after he told me he was having sex with someone else while I was pregnant. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Dragged me around the kitchen floor by my hair in front of my children when I went, why did you pour oil all over my child's bib? Couldn't you just lift the bib out of the sink? And he went ballistic and their fight was on and my kids were there. And so I get blamed in the court for that, but I'm off topic again. Anna Gray turns up at my door and I just think, wow, what a beautiful person. And then she tells me her story, and her story is that after her child sustains a birth injury because of a negligent midwife at Randwick Public Hospital, leaving her child in meconium to drown in her own meconium as she was giving birth, telling Anna that it was just old blood when in fact it was fecal material, which caused a stroke. It caused cerebral palsy in her daughter. Now, Anna was getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Anna was getting up as a makeup artist for SBS at 4 a.m. in the morning, and she was going onto set, and she was doing the makeup for women who were well-paid, famous Australian actors. And as she did their makeup, their personal assistants that they were using were tax deductions to them. But her cerebral palsy harmed daughter, who she had had to find a carer for to come in at 5 a.m. to give her breakfast, get her up, take her to school, put her in a uniform, give her breakfast, take her to school. And then the same at the other end of the day. She had to find all the money to pay for that person. That person wasn't even a tax write-off. Do you understand what patriarchy is? It's budget spends. It's what you value. It's what you value. Okay? And if you value shoving women in with sacks around their heads in 45-degree heat and then bashing them to death like Amina in Iran with the so-called morality police, or the Taliban running around and murdering them, telling them all they can't go to school, the Catholic Church telling them they can't have an abortion or can't have a condom. This is men. This is men running the world, and this is what they do to women. And so getting back to Australia and the advanced democracy that we're in 2023, where we still don't have and never will equality for women, because if particularly women are leaving abusive men, like I did twice with young children who were under 5 for a very long while, in fact 5 whole years, until they went to school. And so they required 4 years of my life. So I get railroaded out of working on film sets for Phil Noyce's first AD, Steve E. Andrews, look him up. Phil Noyce has worked with Angelina Jolie, made The Bone Collector with her. He also made The Quiet American with Michael Caine. He made Rabbit Proof Fence. Google him, okay? So his first AD, the first assistant director who actually goes out and directs on the set, liked the cut of my jib. And I was the third AD on a massive big shoot, 2,000 people out in the west of Sydney. So I had a life ahead of me that if I could have afforded childcare, and particularly with a university degree making film and being interested in politics and journalism, as I always have been, anybody knows me knows that. I've been an inveterate campaigner and fundraiser for World Wildlife Foundation, Jimmy Little Foundation, giving Aboriginal kidney dialysis machines to people on country so they don't have to travel 4 hours each way to receive diabetes care. I've worked for free on the board of Women in Film and Television in 2001, rolling out the National Screen Sound Mentoring Scheme for women in screen composing and screen sound design, organising the biggest thing they ever had, the president said. Sarah Runcie, she's now the CEO of Brisbane Writers Festival. I'm not just dropping names, I'm giving you my credentials, okay? I'm not being a wanker because I'm a woman talking about myself. I'll take up as much space as I fucking well like. I'll spread my legs on a train too, okay? I will womansplain to you what men are doing to women with their budgets. And if you are watching this right now and you haven't contacted your local MP federally and said, what is it that we can afford $600 billion redundant? $600 billion? That's like getting up near towards $1 trillion, right? And you can afford boys' war toys for the war machine, for the endless, as Bill Fay would sing, the war machine, right? Look him up too, you'll cry. Bill Fay, War Machine. Get the whole album. You're just going to need a box of Kleenex tissues. Heads up. If you can afford this, Australia, which is absolutely moronic, you need to stop it right now because they're already redundant due to these underwater detection systems from China, the drones that fly underwater and can detect submarines, and also because our submarines aren't going to turn up anyway for another 10 years and China won't wait for 10 years to march down through the South China Sea and take Taiwan. Duh. Right? Like this you could explain to a child. It's not rocket science. Okay, so it's not on unless if you're watching this and you haven't done anything as an Australian man. A male champion of change is one of the organisations you could join. But if you have not actually phoned your local MP and gone, feel a bit embarrassed, I got a dick, which means I get paid more. I got more superannuation. Don't have to bear the lion's share of unpaid work, bringing up children when they're young and taking time out of my paid job so that I don't have as much superannuation. And then when my parents get sick, being the main person who stops work and downs all tools, doesn't earn an income for years, and they could take 7, 5, 10 years to die. Who knows? You might have a high needs child out there. G'day, Amanda Ballin, I love you. And your whole life is just devoted to putting them in and out of toileting and shower tubs and feeding them because they're highly spastic and autistic when they're born, and your husband leaves you and never pays your child support. Not like anyone ever came after that prick for any money either for her, right? You know, bullshit. I know. G'day, Lisa Hennessy. One of the many hundreds of women who I know who never got paid one red fucking cent of child support because their husbands either buried it in their parents' houses, their houses bought, or trust funds, or buried it like my eldest daughter did when I could have taken a claim on him for his assets and didn't because I'm a decent person. And I say I'm a decent person because we didn't have an arrangement that included me making a claim on him. But then he made a claim on me to stop me from moving into a house I could afford 75 minutes north of Sydney in a place called Umina up on the Central Coast, which I then flipped and moved up to Fegans Bay overlooking the water. But that's another story. And then lost it completely because when I was bleeding to death, like Alice Cooper sang, only women bleed, except you guys do in war, right? When I was bleeding to death, I got put on a 5-week-long public hospital wait list on which I would have died because 3 days later in the private system for 18 grand, I nearly did. So I had to sell my fucking house, didn't I? So, and then I told you in all of these videos, the catastrophic lineage of events of my mum dying 12 weeks later, my godfather, her stepbrother murders his wife, I'm shedding blood, and then our court case comes up with the family law court. The judge looks at me, we get the wrong judge, she's got no prior carriage, she doesn't care that this man's assaulted 3 women on the police record, she doesn't care that my affidavit is from his wife saying he constantly abused me even when he didn't just kick me up the arse and chip my coccyx bone on Christmas Day in the year 2000. It was constant emotional and verbal and mental abuse. Constant, but he presents as mild-mannered. That's what she said. And then this female judge who had no prior carriage, federal magistrate Leanne Turner, I'm trying to get her sacked from the entire system, sets it aside because it's older than 1 year by the time we get to trial. Are you joking? That's a rule. I didn't know that because I'm not a lawyer. So I'm standing there bleeding. Mum's died. I'm grieving. There's a murder gone down from her stepbrother. I'm shocked. I'm bleeding and I self-defend. And I'm making like, look at this. Why aren't you looking at his violence and his police record? It was subpoenaed in front of them, right? And then she rules out the affidavit, because it's older than 1 year, that corroborates the police record. And then she rules out a voicemail, which is totally admissible because someone knows they're being recorded. And in Australia, that's the law. If they know they're being recorded, you can give it to a court of law as evidence. And so I give his other partner, saying exactly the same thing in an email, and a voicemail, which I had transcribed into my affidavit, written it down. And so she rules it out and says, oh, you don't have a transcriber's qualification, do you, Ms. Farrow-Pryke? And I went, sorry, what do you mean? She said, you know what I mean exactly. You don't, do you? And I went, well, I've got a university degree and I speak English, and so is the person on the phone. Why don't you just listen to the tape and see if it's not the same as what I've written in my affidavit? No, that's out, she said, Leanne Turner. By the time I got her thrown off anything to do with our matter, because she ruled my 5-year-old daughter away at that point to a man who then moved 2 hours south from me with some bogan I'd never met in my life, a drunk. And the level of filth in their house, like I went and visited my daughter one day, just bashed on the door in driving rain. I drove from the Central Coast to Engadine. That's a long drive. And people on the F3 were stopped. They could not even see. They could not, this is no exaggeration. It was sheeting rain so extensively that they could not see 5 metres in front of them. Trucks were like not moving, everyone was not moving. And I just crawled all the way down from the very north to the very south. It's a 2.5-hour drive, knocked on their door and said, I need to see my child and give me my child and I want to spend time with her. And she was in her bedroom and this woman answered, okay, as if my child should be ever kept from me, when I'd run a daycare facility, glowing references for 4 years, had been a professional nanny in 21, 22 after this moment, right? Actually during that moment, and just before the moment that I'd knocked on the door, getting that right. And I went into her bedroom and she was playing with a lot of the toys and beautiful things that I'd bought her and the lovely stuff, all the books that I'd bought her and all these lovely clothes my sister Natasha had also gifted her and Elise had gifted her because they had a expensive kids clothing shop at Avalon. All this beautiful high-end, stuff and really intelligent, lovely books and everything. And I said, oh, should I sit on your bed? Let's play with the dollies over here. My broken-hearted, like my little 5-year-old and 6-year-old girl, not tucked into bed at night more than once every fortnight, like this is just, it's unreal. I mean, try not to cry. And so I look at the bed and the bed is just filth. Like it's just this... I'm going pink because I've got hypertension and I'm extremely anxious all of the time, so I'm on beta blockers for that, and I nearly had a stroke. So, sorry for going pink, but that's what happens when I don't have the aircon on and I get extremely anxious about these issues because I shiver. I now have tremor in my heart all night. I wake up with tremor in my heart. I barely sleep, as you can see. So, my heart's falling down and my body's breaking down due to chronic lack of sleep and extreme stress, and the diagnosis is what you're looking at right now is not mental illness like this is what they just roll everything into that one brand, that one term, mental illness. Not at all. Someone who's psychotic from either a drug-induced psychosis or a naturally induced psychosis is not the same as someone who's bipolar. It's not the same as someone who's schizophrenic. All of that is a very different class with very different drugs as well, as to the class of what I'm in, which is called chronic complex PTSD, because the PTSD that's making you traumatised and relive in your mind is chronic. It's ongoing. It didn't just happen once in a war and you've come home and you're replaying this horrible, horrible thing that you can't forget from the war. It's happening every day to you still. And so it's complex PTSD and major clinical depression. And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at someone getting very worn out from never being able to sleep. And then when I can sleep, again, I did it last night. I literally woke up this morning at 6:30 talking to my children in my dreams. And then I wake up and the nightmare begins. Okay? So the good news is this, and this is why I would urge you to push it around. Getting back, other than my regular, assholes call it, oh, you're ranting. No, I'm fucking not. I'm making a soliloquy. I'm making a dissertation is what it's properly called. It's a dissertation. I'm taking apart topics properly and I'm articulating them, and then I'm spinning off on angles of those topics and giving proof and evidence. I'm making an argument, a debate for, and a case for something. So if you can have people in this country running budgets where they're spending $600 billion on submarines that are already redundant by way of underwater detection systems from the Chinese and that aren't going to turn up anyway until the Chinese are long turned up into the port of Darwin, had a cup of tea and went, thanks, we own this too, great. Glad you just gave it to us under the Scott Morrison government under Malcolm Turnbull and the Northern Territory and the Country Party in the Northern Territory, you idiots who think you can run the economy better than Labor. Bullshit. You signed off for 99 years the port of Darwin, and to pay out that debt, or what that would cost if we just went, oh, sorry, China, too fucking bad, we're taking it back. International relations, biggest trading partner. What are you guys fucking doing? You couldn't organise, this is the disgusting old crude saying that used to go on, but I got this one from Bill Leake. He was full of good crude Australianisms, and he said to me, oh, you've heard that one, haven't you? About couldn't organise a route with a fistful of hundreds in a brothel. Thanks, Bill. That's a beauty. But that's what I would, try and put my hilarious hat on and say to the men running this country. You couldn't organise a route in a brewery with a fistful of hundreds. Right now, you are literally selling this country up the river. You are missing $1.78 for every dollar spent on childcare. How do you justify that? What's your bullshit argument going to be this week? Oh, we can't afford to give university free to... Bullshit, you can't. You can't afford not to. Because if you're getting $1.78 back to the tax base for every dollar that you're putting into it, you'd be a moron. So why? Let's ask, ladies and gentlemen, why are they not providing it? Because we don't matter. They don't need to. Why should they? Oh, we're already coping and getting along. Well, fuck. No, we're not. Because, as I was saying, the last 20 years of my life, I wouldn't trade my 3 children for anything. They are gold. And everybody who knows me and has seen me with them wrote it down, knows it, said it, felt it, saw it. I've got references coming out of my ears from my family, from my daycare clients, from my nannying clients. in lockdown when everyone was working from home and could see everything that I was doing, right? Barristers they were, partners in law firms, yeah? And yet I haven't seen my children for 3 years because there's no criminalisation of that. And I literally don't have a career anymore because I stopped and left 2 men who abused me to bring them up by myself. And what did I get? See you later, CV. No superannuation for you. Oh, and by the way, my house is on the market. Anyone want to buy a nice house? 1850s cottage, the most rich, fecund land in Australia. The locals brag that you spill some milk and overnight a cow will spring up. Yeah, I got one of those going for sale now, and here goes the descent into homelessness, doesn't it? Like the biggest growing cohort of people who are homeless in Australia are women in their 50s who've got no CVs anymore because they spent their time bringing up their kids. Kids are gone, husband's gone, they're suddenly by themselves and they're sleeping in their cars. Okay, I got physically assaulted by 2 men out of the 3 parents of my children. Oldest one not, he was a sperm donor. He still took me through the family law court. Unreal. And so I stupidly agree and go, okay, well, we can share her when she starts school. I couldn't find a job or a house because no one will give you one without the other, remember? This is in 2010. Like, how do you get a house without a job? Well, the real estate agent just looks at you and goes, sorry, we've got 30 lawyers who just applied for this. Well, you're out. Well, how do you get a job without a house? Oh, okay, you can start tomorrow, can you? Oh, where am I going to live? Where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to live? But, you know, it's mutually related. And this is just no-brainer stuff. Feminists have been saying this for 55 fucking years. So what's the men's excuse this week? Okay? So shout out to every single minister in every single portfolio, and the Teals particularly. You know, I want to bring climate change down in 2 generations. No, everyone's focusing on Elon's fucking big cars and his big rocket over to Mars that he can get on and piss off and leave his $45 billion that he screwed down to Twitter here for all the world's poor women who've got no contraception, because the best way to halve climate change is give every woman contraception for free, jab in the arm. That's what they want. They don't want to be impregnated every time a man ejaculates into them, okay? They don't. And then they get an education, and within 2 generations, you'd halve the world's population virtually. Literally. Almost overnight, relatively speaking. Okay? But are any of you saying this to anybody? Do you ever, oh, I'm so busy, I might scroll through my Instagram trap, just like, you know, Briggs did with his fantastic recent referendum yes vote video where the 2 girls are sitting in the pub and, oh, we don't really know about the yes vote. Oh, I just haven't had the time. And then he goes, give us your phone. And he looks at the last thing that she was looking at and it's like, you know, did Bozo get voted off Love Island, part 3? And did he have gonorrhea? And it's like, well, I'll just type it here. There's the referendum and that's what we want and that's why we're asking for it, and hands it back to them. And the ad ends, right? If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It's a viral sensation. Never too late. But you could explain this shit just like he did in that video to a child. So you can only conclude that men's budgets, of which we contribute vast amounts of unpaid labour to sustaining by growing up while we don't get paid for taking the time out to bring them up, taxpayers. Future, likely Australian, they could move overseas, but likely they'll be Australian taxpayers. And so we're giving you all of our unpaid labour so your budgets can run, but you can't give us childcare. Really? Lions! Bullshit. I'm going to run for Parliament. I'm over this. I'm really over it. I don't know whether it'll be as an independent or a teal or whatever the hell, but these are simple, simple, simple things. And they are not being done because of a value system. So the good news is that after all of these trials and tribulations, after 2.5 years of walking into the family law court, they haven't criminalised the stealing of my children from me. I finally got the national contravention list the national contravention chapter of the family court to list me urgently today. So I will imminently need funds for a lawyer. And that's where I forgot that I dove off before and didn't cover it off. I stood on my feet bleeding, defended myself. But even after I lost my 5-year-old, and the ruling didn't come down till a month after she started kindy next to her brother up at Woy Woy. And then she was ruled away on the 28th of February 2017 on a day that I will never forget. And then literally weeks later, 2 weeks later, on my son's birthday, 14th of March, 2018. So that's not his actual first birthday, but it was on his birthday. So in 2018, I then go back to court for Alice, my eldest child, and I'm self-defending while I'm bleeding because the hysterectomy was in May 2017. So I go back in March 2017, on the 14th of March, and I cross-examine a single expert witness by the name of Associate Professor Carolyn Quadrio. She's a single expert witness for the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual molestation, and I won. Okay? And then I went down like a bag of shit, shaking from all of the trauma that I've described in these videos below, thinking that I had Parkinson's disease, just like my mother suffered for 17 years. But I was just in grief because my little 5-year-old had gone after my other daughter had gone. I've had quite the ride. And so if you cared for me and my children at all, and if you care for other women, for starters, if you care for women at all, you'll actually pull your finger out and get off your Instagram feed and get off your Facebook feed and go, dear local member federally. Look them up. Bullshit easy on Google. I completely cannot believe we are in 2023 and we can't find money for universally free childcare. Albo's mentioning it, so get on, push in, let's go, because I just spent 20 years of my life. My eldest daughter is 18 and a half, about to turn 19. She had to cook in the bun in the oven. I was working through that right up until the time when she was born. But after that, I've spent 19 years of my life from 34 to 52 when I could have been doing myriad other things that I was trained to do on a tertiary level. And it's gone because I couldn't afford childcare and I had to leave men who were abusive to me. So so my career's, I don't have one. Forced into childcare, professional nanny for barristers. So, meanwhile, by the way, if you're a man who thinks that you care about women, on this letter you can add to your local MP. And by the way, why is it that women's HECS debts are going up, literally, indexed to the CPI is what it's called? They are rising. The debt doesn't sit there at just 40,000. It goes up each year in what they call real terms. So if the CPI, which is based on inflation, so watch out, that's going up. If the consumer price index is 3.5%, which it currently is roughly, then our HECS debts, women's HECS debts, are going up and up and up every year that we are not working and paying them down by paid labour. So if we're taking time out to be a mum and you've got a HECS debt, it's going up. Why the fuck? Why? Why wasn't Anna Gray, and Anna Gray, hi again, going back to you, Anna, the wonderful makeup artist from SBS, who was having to pay to have her cerebral palsy daughter looked after from 5 a.m. in the morning to be on set, and was doing the makeup of all these flash, wealthy, famous women whose assistants were tax write-offs to them. But Anna's daughter's childcare was not a 100% tax deduction to her. And this is way before the NDIS, which is why I cried when Gillard brought it in. So I shut my door, hounded Malcolm Turnbull before he was the Prime Minister and before he oversaw Darwin Port being given to the Chinese and before he said no to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Could have made a legacy issue. You were going to be played and knifed in the back by ScoMo anyway because you knew you were flanked by Christian right-wing nutjobs, so you knew you had no chance. You were stuffed from the get-go. You were never going to be able to go anywhere in that environment. So the best and most intelligent thing you could have done is a couple of big legacy issues. But you're smart, but you weren't that smart, were you, Malcolm? But you're smart enough to stick your money overseas in Cayman Island or other tax havens, right? But yet women with cerebral palsy daughters getting up at 5 a.m. can't claim a 100% tax deduction. You fuckers. You got the whole thing stitched up, don't you? 51% of the population we are. 51%. We're the majority, darling. Us. Overthrow them, ladies. Piss them off. Get rid of them. They're not making the right decisions for the planet. They're warmongers who are over in the Gaza Strip murdering children. They're Hamas murdering Israelis. They're sticking bags on your head. Can you just imagine turning on the news at night and seeing a whole lot of women literally holding guns against men saying you can't leave the house unless you stick this bag on your head in 45-degree heat too. And you can't go to school because you've got a cock. And they've got guns and they're forcing you into it. And then they're beating you because your sack wasn't correctly placed over your beard. Or whatever the fuck. Can you imagine it? Just doesn't exist, does it? Anywhere. This job of feminism is not, you'd think that, I couldn't believe PJ Harvey. What? Oh, I wouldn't call myself a feminist. Oh, yeah, really? Why not? Twit. Yeah, she's cool and everything. Oh, she's so cool. Yeah, she rocks. Yeah, she rocks that guitar. But boy, did her brain not work when she said that. Why wouldn't you call yourself a feminist? To call yourself a feminist is to call yourself a humanist. Okay? That's what that is. So, I'm going to go. Anna Gray, I went to Malcolm Turnbull, finished that story off, knocked on his door, and one of his lovely, very, very intelligent, very, very gay policy advisors, whose name eludes me, gave me 45 minutes, and I told him that story. And I said, how is it that women can't make 100% tax write-off of their childcare? I mean, back in the day when I was 18, there were things called 10BA tax breaks for the film industry, but there were also things called liquid lunches and entertainment expenses. You could actually get your lunch and all the piss that you drank at it with your advertising business associate clients written off as a tax break. Yeah? Mainly men were running most shows then. But you can't give a tax break for 100% refund for childcare costs for women, even though you won't make it free in the first place, because you've got to make it free and guarantee them. Like, this is what happens in Germany. And the way I know is that German women came into my daycare in Clovelly from 2011 to 2015, and they told me, they went, Jesus Christ, we cannot believe how expensive this city is. This is another woman said this from Switzerland. I had women from Ireland, England, Switzerland, Germany. They came into the eastern suburbs childcare and they would say, this place is out of control. The food's expensive, the rent's through the roof, but childcare, my God. I said, what's the case in Germany then? Like, how much is it there? And they said, do you know what the case is there? It's provided for free by the local council. And I went, oh, really? Wow. Well, isn't there more demand than supply? And she said, oh, no. If you're ready to go back to work and they don't have a place for you, you can sue them. Right on, sister. And I don't believe Angela Merkel was heading up Germany at that point. For a moment. I'm sorry, I'll get rid of that call. I'll call him back. So the point of it all is, at the end of all of that, I finally got an immediate listing for my contravention order for my children. And so fingers crossed that we get an immediate hearing, because they're not going to be able to hear it in one day. It's going to take 4. And I could stand on my feet and do this all over again, just like I cross-examined for Alice and won, cross-examining Professor Carolyn Quadrio while I was bleeding to death, 5 weeks off an emergency hysterectomy, having just 2 weeks before lost my 5-year-old daughter and suffered my mum 6 months earlier, dying 7 months, and my godfather 3 months earlier, 4 months earlier, murdering his wife, her stepbrother, after 45 years of marriage. I could do it all again. And in some ways, in that entire time, like, I really wish, hi Leah Jet, if you're watching, hi Leah Grishevitz, my long-term buddy, because she just said, Danny, I'll go and do law. And so did my dad, but I just said, mate, I hate the lies so much that I'd just lose my shit and flip my wig as soon as I heard. I'd be like, don't do it! And they'd just be like, out! Because I care. You know, I care too much to be able to stand in a court of law and defend a rapist. I don't know how these people sleep at night. I don't know how criminal barristers sleep at night. And I've met them. The highest ones in Australia. We had some good chats. I met barristers. I mean, I don't know where they put what they do, but I would therefore have been better to have been a human rights advocate, you know, and should have done that earlier. But unfortunately, and fortunately, because I love them dearly, So it's not unfortunate at all, but it's unfortunate for my CV and unfortunate for this nation's women in a modern democracy like 2023. And it's unfortunate for you if you're a man or a woman watching this and you haven't done anything about it, even though you believe it. Well, the world doesn't really know what your head's thinking unless you put it out there to your local rep. That's what a democracy's for, right? Just not a very long letter. We believe in universally free childcare now to empower women to have exactly the same ability, not rights or capacity, ability. You enable women to return to the paid workforce by giving them childcare. Why shouldn't we be able to? You do. Well, we stay at home and bring everyone up to create the future taxpayers. You know, even people like me on welfare. We're paying GST every single time we buy something. And if they're jacking it up like they are at Coles and Woolies, and they're jacking up prices, profiteering off the conversation that, oh, everything's going up due to the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. Oh, this is good. Excellent. Everyone thinks everything's going up. So let's just put it up like way up. And they put it so far up that the $2.50 green crappy little shampoo that I buy called Fructos down on the very bottom shelf where they make you bend right down if you're going to pay that little money. You're going to have to work to pay that little money. I used to bend down and pick up a $2.50 at Coles brand of shampoo called Fructos and pick it up and put it in my trolley. It was $8 last week. That's not the petrol crisis. These West farmers are making record profits. You're being told a lie. The Reserve Bank literally needs to actually be finished and sacked because their stupid blunt instrument of raising rates as if that's all that they're measuring, going, oh, productivity's not going anywhere. Bullshit. You haven't put our wages up for 15 years and all the poorest people are being paid shit. They're being paid $23 an hour. I was getting $20 an hour in 1991. Cash in hand. So 33 years later, it's legal for Coles and Woolies and Kmart, another one, to pay poor, untrained women, often mums needing a job, stacking shelves, and dads and young people going through uni and labour to pay them shit money, absolutely nothing. And then middle people haven't. I was on 80 grand working from home in 2009. I'd be lucky to get an 80,000. I can't get a job because now my CV says, oh, run a childcare centre. So they think my brain's atrophied and it doesn't work anymore. So I haven't been in the game for 5 years, so you're not getting a job. I can't get a job anywhere. I send off hundreds each week. No, they won't have me because I had children and I had to pay for it with everything in my life. My entire life had to pay for that. So I'm asking you, in closing, to go over and help pay for my court case because it's now on. It's game on. And I really need to finish the Anna Gray thing. The lovely gay guy who was a policy advisor listened to me for 45 minutes and I said, how is it that this lovely woman doesn't get a tax break and the famous women who she does the makeup for in her chair do? And how come it's not tax deductible? And they said, okay, good point. And I said, and another thing, why is child support capped at $430 a week? And they went, what do you mean? And I went, well, I've looked it up and it says that the most money you'll ever have to pay for one child is $430. And they looked, oh, is that a fact? Look it up. I went, yeah, look, here it is. They go, oh. They go, why is that a problem? I said, well, I've met a guy who's works for British American Tobacco as an executive. He's on $20 million a year. And Alan Joyce didn't do too badly. Why should he be capped or they be capped? Not like Alan Joyce was having a child in a hurry, apparently. But why should they be capped at a $430 a week, particularly when you've got a cost of living expense going up? Why is that not being changed and reformed by Labor? Why is it criminal to drive your car having not been able to afford to pay $120, which is then $170 parking fine, even though you can still drive exactly as you could before, your skill set hasn't changed? Why are you in a criminal court next to a rapist and a murderer for driving your car after not paying a parking fine? They cancel your licence. But there's nothing done if my ex-partner steals my children from me against family law court parenting orders. no criminalisation. And why this and why that? I've got a whole bunch of whys that are going to be coming right at you. Don't worry, I'm spend all day before I get on this thing, and I'm not going to put myself down and say gas bag. I'm going to say make a stand, take a stand, give a dissertation, make a good argument in the competition of ideas. Not like this should be a competition. It's actually human rights for women, isn't it? And I've got a raft of them, so don't worry, I spend all day on this Apple Mac just writing to ministers, giving them policy ideas, feeding it up. Could I please speak to Policy Advisor 4? I'd like to know why. Could you please tell me your rationale on this? Maybe if you did this, this would happen. Don't you think that's a better policy setting? I'm not just for the sake of people like thinking, oh, she likes to see herself on Facebook. No. I'm campaigning as I have since I was 10. Go check it out at LinkedIn. It's all there. No, actually, I didn't put that there. I should. You're right. Actually, I should do that. At 10 years of age, as Danny Hannon and Jeremy Pepper and Sharon Longridge will attest, they're all my friends here. Not that you can see my friends. I've made sure of that. We fundraised for the World Wildlife Foundation, and we raised, in a jelly bean guessing competition, $350 because little baby seals were having their heads clubbed to death next to their mothers for their coats, and World Wildlife had activists running onto the ice sheets and spraying them with red paint to ruin their coats so that they weren't murdered. And we did that at 10. So I ain't no Julie, not Johnny, come lately. I ain't no Julie come lately to campaigning for what's right in the world. So don't pretend for 1 minute that this is about self-interest. It's about 51% of the planet's interest. Okay? And by the way, you guys are all going to be a hell of a lot happier if we're a lot happier and we're a lot wealthier and we're a lot more... we will not be as nearly resentful, because right now... the best march I've ever been on in 2021, other than the anti-Iraq one in 2001, the best march, or was it 2003, was 2021's Women's March in Sydney. That was the sexiest group of men and women I've ever seen in my life. There were as many men there, and I say sexy because they were smart, and they were cool, they looked good, and they sounded good. Like, when I mean they dressed cool, and they were like... there was passion, and there was just this beautiful camaraderie, and it was 50% men, 50% women as far as the eye could see, just like 10, 15,000 at least, I think it was. I think it got an official count of 15 or 20. I'll look that up. But I photographed all the placards. I stood at one point and thought, Jesus, these placards are great. So I just stood there and just photographed as many as I could. And one of them said, it was the best one, it should be internationally on a T-shirt. It's great. It's not mine, but it was hers or whoever's. And I'm sure it's probably 55, 60 years old. Maybe it's 100 years old. But it said, men are lucky that all women want is equality, not revenge. Of which I would have to concur. So that'll be the end of that for today. Please, 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 if you've got any spare coin or you know anybody who does... it's game on. After all of this thwarting and after all of this misery and suffering, I've finally got an immediate and urgent listing in the family law court, and I could stand here and do it by myself again, but I'm tired. I don't sleep, and I have nightmares, and I miss my children every single moment of the day. So please help if you can. And thank you for listening. And share it. Share it to someone who can help. And write to your MPs and say this stuff. Say, I mean, it's everywhere. Feminists have been saying it for 60 fucking years and more. Bye.